better way to show the tweet?
No, I think that's probably your best way.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense. Okay, everyone. So welcome to the June meeting of the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations and Community Groups. I'm Steve Anderson from West 81st Street. I've got the Block Association with the most unwieldy name, the Theodore Roosevelt Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm serving this year as the coalition president. Our website is upperwestsidecoalition.org. Our email is upperwestsidecoalition@gmail.com. If you are a block association, please check out our website and consider joining us. If you want to start a block association, please see information that we have on our website and email us. If you are an Upper West Sider who wants to know about our programs and be emailed and be put on a newsletter list, we're eager to do so. Please let us know. Last month's meeting focused on crime and crime prevention on the Upper West Side. We were joined by the 3 commanding officers of the precincts on the Upper West Side, and more than 500 households attended or streamed that forum. Weed on the Upper West Side is the topic of this evening's monthly meeting. We thank the remarkable Mark Diller from West 79th Street and a member of our community board, 7, a former chair, for his assistance with the technical demands that make this all possible. And I'm joined by 2 equally remarkable neighbors, both from the West 75th Street Block Association. Dee Reber is the editor of our newsletter and will share questions to our guests that are sent via the YouTube chat. And Liz DeVito, a coalition board member and a key member in the organization of our monthly programs, and so much more, by the way, will share questions submitted in advance. If you have submitted a question in advance, and there are many, and should we run out of time, which we probably will, we will ask our guests to provide an answer after the meeting and to share those responses with you. So thanks to Mark, Dee, and Liz, and especially all of you, our neighbors, for being with us this evening. Among the subjects that so many of us are talking about is the soon to be implemented new law passed by the state legislature regarding cannabis. How should and could block associations and residents engage on this issue? Of course, regarding the location of the stores, but there's also many complex rules and regulations that are to accompany this new legislation. Here tonight is a time to share your ideas and concerns, while those who are writing the rules are still working to complete that effort. And many have reported sales already prevalent throughout the Upper West Side, from trucks and stores, and wondering why that's happening and what happens next when there are licensed stores. We're pleased to have 2 guests from the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. Pascal Bernard is the Deputy Director of Intergovernmental Relations, and Philip Rumsey is the Manager of Intergovernmental Outreach. They're going to make a presentation about everything connected to the new law regarding cannabis and the licensing of growers and soon for retailers on the Upper West Side and throughout the state. A little later, to take questions specifically about law enforcement and prosecution of those violating the laws currently in force, we will be joined by 2 from the Office of the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. More to listen, but also to answer your questions. So we will also welcome Assistant District Attorney Justin Tatham from the Crime Strategies Unit and Estelle Stryker-Santiago, Director of Community Partnerships Unit. So let's start with Pascal and Philip and their presentation. And thanks again to all of you for being here. Pascal?
Thank you so much, Steve. On behalf of our board chair, Tremaine Wright, and our executive director, Chris Alexander, we'd like to thank everybody for the invitation. We will be providing as up-to-date information as we have, and we look forward to answering your question. My colleague, Phil Rumsey, will be conducting the PowerPoint. Phil, the floor is yours.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I'll get going with a PowerPoint here. And again, this will be an overview of what of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, or what I'll be referring to as MRTA. and also some of the most up-to-date information on the steps that we have taken so far. So let me bring this up. Okay. Okay, can everyone see this all right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
good. Okay, perfect. Okay. There we go. So here's a quick introduction to cannabis in New York State. And I want to start off here with some of the kind of foundational information. So what is cannabis? What are we talking about here? Cannabis sativa is a plant with many different uses. It's been used for medical, industrial, and food purposes for thousands of years. THC and CBD are the two most well-known compounds found in cannabis. THC is known for its euphoric high or feeling you get when you consume it. CBD offers many of the similar benefits without the high. And then there is hemp as well. Hemp is the same plant as adult use cannabis. However, it contains 0.3% or less THC. So what is MRTA? The Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act was passed into law March 31st of last year. It legalized adult use cannabis, recreational marijuana, while also expanding the state's existing medical cannabis and cannabinoid or CBD hemp programs. And the legalization represented a shift in the public health framework, and it is geared towards social justice, economic development, and public safety. MRTA also created the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. The office is overseen by a 5-member cannabis control board. And what does the Office of Cannabis Management, or OCM, regulate? It's the medical cannabis program, which has been around since 2014. That certainly predates adult use. We also regulate cannabinoid or CBD hemp for human consumption. And those can be the tinctures that you see in different stores, or the creams with CBD or shampoo, things like that, and adult use cannabis. The MRTA emphasizes social and economic justice, and there's 3 main parts to this. First is equity in the marketplace. MRTA, again, the legislation that created adult use, has a goal of awarding 50% of adult use licenses to social and economic equity applicants, and the development of a social and economic equity plan. Secondly, record expungement. MRTA automatically clears an individual's past marijuana conviction, and to date, nearly 400,000 records have been expunged. Community reinvestment. MRTA also will allow for 40% of the adult use cannabis revenue to be put towards rebuilding communities that were disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. So some opportunities that in the New York State cannabis industry. I want to quickly just show everyone this slide. This is the adult use cannabis supply chain. And it's a great picture that really goes over the totality of the industry. We have a term called seed to sale, and this that term seed to sale is meant to discuss every aspect of the supply chain. So you can see we start with cultivators. We go on to laboratory testing. Laboratory testing is very important throughout MRTA. We'll be testing for pesticides, heavy metals in the soil that would be brought into the plant, and for purity and the amount of There will be additional laboratory testing. The manufacturing is where people would put the flower or the bud into a proper labeled container or turn it into gummies or vapes, things of that nature. After manufacture, again, you have laboratory testing going on to wholesalers, and then the retail level, the dispensaries at the final chain here. So MRTA has 9 license types. And so, we have the cultivator, nursery, processor, distributor, retail dispensary, delivery, on-site consumption, adult use cooperative, and micro businesses. These are the 9 licenses that MRTA created. A few notes here. One, we do have a great section on our website under the adult use tab, which lists many FAQs that you'll be able to go through. One of those FAQs does go into more detail on these license types. Secondly, one of the reasons that we have these 9 license types is to make sure we can break up the seed to sale ecosystem so that more individuals will be able to participate in it. We've seen in other states that individuals, whether it is companies with large quantities of money, individuals with a lot of money, families with a lot of money, they can come in and dominate the seed to sale process. They can lock up some farmers with the cultivators, maybe create their own manufacturing center, lock in a lot of the retail dispensaries. We wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. So these 9 license types are really entry points into the seed to sale process, which allows for a greater number of individuals to take part in the overall cannabis ecosystem. And again, there is more information on each of these different license types, but do want to emphasize here that this is geared towards allowing as many people to partake in the cannabis ecosystem as possible without any one entity or person becoming fully integrated and dominating the seed to sale process. In addition to this, there's many ancillary businesses, and I think this would be, this is kind of the think creative slide, and I think that would be great for everyone listening here. There's many ancillary businesses which do not need a license from the Office of Cannabis Management in order to become involved with the cannabis ecosystem. So you can see here, this is a small number of these: packaging and label companies, e-commerce websites, media networks, hydroponics, vertical agriculture, nutrient suppliers, payroll companies, accounting, real estate. And you can see that in addition to the licenses that we're giving out, which are really directly infused into the cannabis ecosystem, there are already existing businesses which do not need a license from the Office of Cannabis Management to, again, jump into this ecosystem. So when you're talking to your neighbors, constituents, individuals interested in this, see if they have an existing business. See if there's a way that they can take their existing business and expand it into the cannabis ecosystem. And it's certainly an additional way to partake. So I want to shift here a little bit to the conditional adult use licenses. And as you can see here, what we were talking about on the right side of your screen, the MRTA, the MRTA licenses, those were the 9 license types I just went over, and those license types will be included in regulations soon. You can see on the left side of your screen, we have the conditional licensing. This is a standalone conditional licensing system separate from the MRTA licenses. This includes adult use, conditional cultivator license, and what I will go into more detail here, the conditional adult use retail dispensary licenses. So seeding opportunity initiative, the governor pushed for the seeding opportunity initiative in this year's budget. And this is to help position justice-involved business owners or family members to be the first to make adult use sales in the state of New York. In this proposal, there was a $200 million public-private social equity cannabis investment program that will help to provide funding to conditional retail dispensaries. And again, the funding is to help support social equity entrepreneurs and assist with the cost of establishing and operating the adult use cannabis retail dispensary. New York State, again, did include this in the budget, and the funds for this, the $200 million social equity fund, may be used to assist with identifying or acquiring or leasing retail space for the conditional retail dispensaries, helping with design and construction of the space, and fitting out locations with furniture and other equipment to help, again, jumpstart the conditional retail dispensaries. The funds for the $200 million, $50 million is coming from the licensing fees and revenue, and an additional $150 million will be coming from the private sector. So again, the retail dispensaries, we sometimes refer to as CARD for conditional adult use retail dispensaries. It does give equity businesses first mover advantage in the New York State cannabis industry. March 10th of this year, the Cannabis Control Board passed a resolution creating this and allowing for its the initial phase of its implementation, which included releasing regulations. The public comment period for the adult use retail dispensaries, the conditional ones, it did end May 31st of this year, so it kind of just came to an end. It went out for its initial 60-day public comment period after the Cannabis Control Board passed the resolution. The Office of Cannabis Management lawyers are currently looking at the comments made and will determine whether or not they need to go out for an additional 45-day public comment period. But right now we're going through them to determine whether or not a second round of public comment period will be needed. So to kind of break this down in a kind of a simple way here, the conditional adult use retail dispensaries, there's two avenues. One is an individual or a family member with a New York State cannabis related conviction and experience owning or operating a qualifying business. The second entity that can apply for this is also a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization, which has been intentionally serving justice-involved people. So the requirements for this conditional retail dispensary for an individual, there would need to be proof of justice involvement. Applicants must obtain a certificate of disposition from the jurisdiction where the arrest or conviction occurred. Again, the two main qualifying filters for an individual to apply for this was a conviction of a cannabis-related offense in New York State before the passage of MRTA, which was March 31st of last year, that's 2021, and had a parent, legal guardian, child, spouse, or dependent who was convicted of a related offense before the passage of MRTA as well. Secondly, business experience. The applicant must demonstrate that they have a minimum of 2 years business ownership with at least 10% interest in the business. Ownership requirements, at least 51% or more of the proposed applicant is owned by someone who is eligible for the conditional licenses. So again, for individuals, you have a cannabis related offense before the passage of MRTA and a business experience of 2 years with at least 10% interest in that business. For individual requirements, individuals who are interested in this would need a copy of a valid ID with a issued by a local, state, or federal government, personal history statement, fingerprint submission, bank records, business documents, and there is a $2,000 non-refundable application fee that individuals will need in preparation if they are interested in the conditional retail dispensary. Furthermore, for the 501c3, if they apply, there needs to be they need to have intentionally served justice-involved individuals and communities disproportionately impacted by prohibition, have a history of creating opportunities for justice-involved individuals, and have a minimum of 5 full-time employees. Again, the comment period for the regulations have ended. However, the regulations are certainly up on our website, and would certainly push anyone interested in knowing a little bit more on the detail here to take a look at the proposed regulations. So where are we today? MRTA again signed into law March 31st of last year. Regulations are under development. Again, the card regulations public comment period has ended. And we're looking over those comments right now. The conditional adult use retail dispensary licenses will be issued later this year once the regulations are released. And finally, the adult use licenses being issued, and those would be the MRTA licenses later on. So revenue, supporting New York State communities. The taxation involved here, there will be a 9% state excise tax on the sale of cannabis products by a retailer to a consumer. So this tax kicks in at the dispensary level. There is a 4% local excise tax rate at retail price as well. 25% will go to the county, while 75% will be kept by the municipality, which is hosting the dispensary. In addition, there is a THC tax, and essentially the higher the concentration of THC, the higher the tax. So for instance, there's a 3% tax on edibles, a 5% tax on the bud or flower of the plant, and a 8% tax on concentrates like a tincture or a vape pen of that nature. And this does help us push individuals to a lower THC level, which is more in line with our public health goals. The New York State Cannabis Revenue Fund, all cannabis revenue will be deposited into this fund. Community grants reinvestments. 40% from this fund will go toward, we'll have grants going to nonprofits and community-based organizations in communities that were disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. 20% will be going towards drug treatment and public education. This will help to develop and implement a statewide education campaign and provide substance use disorder treatment programs for youth and adults. And finally, 40% will go towards education. This is similar to the lottery system that has money going towards education. This is in addition to current state funding for education. So how can you help OCM achieve our goals? So connecting with card eligible applicants, we have virtual events beginning in May. OCM does want to have interactions like this with community-based organizations. And if you would like to flag anything for us or have a date in mind, have individuals gathering, email here events@ocm.ny.gov. We'll certainly put that on our radar, and we will be able to determine if we'll be able to send an individual to speak or provide materials. Community outreach events starting in June, though there will be regional events around the state. And support collaboration, certainly identifying, connecting with partners. If there are other entities, groups, people that you would like us to be in front of or be aware of, certainly reaching out to the events email is one way to do that. Connecting OCM to your community. We would love to get feedback on all of the regulations that are coming out. The most recent one and most public one was certainly the conditional retail dispensaries. And again, that comment period for the 60-day comment period has ended. However, if you have suggestions for any regulations that are out for public comment period, we would certainly want you to send an email to regulations@ocm.ny.gov and express your opinion on the proposals. We'll be having a lot of different regulations coming out as time goes on here as we build this ecosystem. And again, just as a kind of long-term reference here, the regulations at ocm.ny.gov is the best way for individuals to express their opinions or changes they would like to see in the proposed regulations. So our public education campaign, in April, we made our first push to really get the word out. And you may have seen some of our billboards or products in the subway or signs wrapped around a bus, giving out a lot of health information. We also have a section of our website that goes into a lot of detail on the different health impacts that can come from cannabis use. Advice on pregnant and breastfeeding individuals, medical use, and what's legal and illegal. We're certainly emphasizing that this is an industry for ages 21 and up. Under that age, you're not supposed to be using adult use cannabis. And again, this was our initial push to really get the word out and start conversations with the communities. So that pretty well sums up where we currently are at the Office of Cannabis Management. Again, the events email that you can see on your screen here is a great way for you to flag future events that you would like us to be aware of. And we would also advise anyone to sign up for OCM updates. You'll get information on when things are going out for public comment period and also future board meetings. And I would emphasize, we do have board meetings quite often, and it is the most direct and straightforward way of understanding where we are in different implementation processes and what's coming in the future. So our board meetings can be very, very useful for understanding what's going on in this ecosystem and where we're headed.
Thanks very much, Philip. We're going to get to questions now from members, and members, when you're speaking, please self-introduce. Peter, you want to kick us off, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Peter Frischhoff. I've lived on the Upper West Side. We call it the Upper Best Side for 72 of my 73 years. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Rumsey, for a really very well thought out presentation. it's the complexity of this rollout is obviously really enormous. Just looking at your one slide showing the supply chain, there must be thousands of individual steps that you are in charge of regulating. So you have an enormous task ahead of you, and it looks like you put a lot of thought into it. So we really appreciate your service in that regard. I'm wondering if you could give us some idea of what the size of the legal cannabis market is in both New York State and New York City, and if you have any sense of goals for tax revenues that might be realized through the implementation of the program.
Yeah, right now, we certainly don't want to get out ahead of ourselves and start projecting how much money may be generated. We've seen from other states that certainly millions of dollars through just the dispensaries alone can be generated. This is certainly, across the nation, a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem that is being created in several different states and now in New York. I'm just apprehensive about putting any number right now on what the possible tax revenue would be. It's going to vary greatly across the board. So I don't have any projections at the moment. However, as time goes on here, we'll certainly have a better understanding of possible tax revenue and what it's going to look like, especially once we get some of the conditional retail dispensaries up and running.
All right,
But
thanks, Philip. I'm gonna jump in here, Philip. Try to get more members to ask you and Pascal to clarify so much of what you shared. Dale, did you have a question or a comment?
While we're going to that to Dale, I also want to direct everybody's attention to the chat. As Phil was talking and presenting, a lot of the materials that he referenced that are on our website are now, the links are in the chat, including a 2018 impact report that I think Peter will give you some sense of the question that will give you a guidance to the question that you were asking.
Thanks, Pascal. Go ahead, Dale.
Thank you. Excellent presentation, very clear, and I know a tremendous amount of work has gone into it. I'm Dale Brown, president of the West 79th Street Block Association, and I'm also a vice president at the coalition. I have a question with regards to safeguards that I'm wondering would be put in place to keep underage children out of these dispensaries.
Pascal, do you want to take that?
Certainly. So the law requires that dispensaries be 500 feet from a house of worship or school. Additionally, the packaging cannot be something that is attractive to children. I will direct you again to the chat. We have proposed regulations out right now as it relates to packaging and marketing. So if you would take a look at the information that's provided in the chat, if you have any recommendations, the public comment period is open. You certainly can make recommendations to the office via the public comment period.
Thanks, Pascal. Shelley, did you have a question? Comment?
Yes, I'm very concerned about the health effects that are not being addressed. From what I know, the effect first of secondhand smoke, as with cigarette smoking, it's the same thing. Whatever is in the same toxins are in the marijuana as you would find in other smoke. So that's problematic. But what really problematic is the effect upon children. So I'm concerned that I don't hear anything about education of the public, because if I were to smoke marijuana in my house and I had young children, I could be affecting them seriously. And all I'd be doing is doing what's legal now. And in other situations, teenagers have other effects. And although they may not be eligible to purchase it, and we can't restrict parents from what they expose their children to, we can educate them. And I would hope that there will be a major education campaign in the media and all over to help people protect those who are going to be negatively affected. The other side thing is, if I have a neighbor who smokes, things go under the door, okay? But I'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm more concerned about children and public education coming before this becomes full-blown.
Yeah,
Go on, Phil.
there's a few things there. One, there is the Clean Indoor Air Act, which previously helped to regulate smoking cigarettes. And each municipality does have the ability to use that in order to restrict where cigarette smoking can happen in their municipality. In addition, once you ban smoking cigarettes in a specific area, cannabis follows. So if cigarettes are banned, so is cannabis. And we have seen in municipalities that they're using this to ban smoking in some city parks, maybe outside of different county or municipal buildings as well, to start to regulate where this can even take place. So that's one tool that each municipality has, and I would certainly recommend, looking into that and seeing where you might restrict smoking in general. Our public health campaign absolutely focuses on children. Obviously, I can only put so much in a PowerPoint presentation, but again, on our website, we do focus on the importance of keeping cannabis locked up in a house where children or pets are involved. We've seen it in other states. That becomes a big issue. We are certainly pushing the message that if you're under 21 years of age, you should not be smoking for a variety of reasons. Also, from the Cannabis Revenue Fund, 20% of that will be going directly towards not only the public health campaign, but addiction services for youth and adults. So we are certainly trying to push that message as strong as we can, making sure the word gets out of who can and cannot be using this. And to your question and previously, the regulations for dispensaries are not fully developed yet, but we can certainly look to Massachusetts as one of the states that has taken stringent methods to make sure that anyone under 21 cannot even get into a dispensary. There's often multiple points where you have to show an ID before you can get into the store. Sometimes they do it outside the store. When you walk in, you're in a smaller section, they scan your ID to verify that it's legitimate and match up and make sure it's the right person, and then you can get into the store. So I think there are many things that we are doing to make sure that the youth are certainly infused with our public messaging campaign and are fully aware of the problems that you'll see if you smoke at a younger age.
And I'd also like to add, prior to any sales, any licenses being issued, the first thing that we as an agency did was our public education campaign. And it really is focused on educating the public about who is allowed to smoke, where you're allowed to smoke, making sure that we educate people about locking it up so that children and pets don't get into your recreational cannabis. And we're doing this, if you're here in you're all here in New York City except for Phil. You see it on the subways. It's also on social media. It's in multiple languages. So we have made an effort to make sure that we're educating people. Again, I direct you to the chat. I did put the link to our public education campaign, the slide that Phil showed, so that you can go in and you can take a look at it at your own leisure. And also, we're working with a sister agency, Oasis, which oversees all the, addiction and substance abuse programming for the state. We have a cannabis advisory board. The commissioner for Oasis sits on that cannabis advisory board. So we really are taking this very seriously, and we're making sure that we educate the public and we put resources behind that education.
Thanks, Pascal. Let's go to Neil for a
Thank you.
question.
Yeah, obviously our community, our neighbors are very concerned about the impact and the environment surrounding the dispensaries and just the public use in public spaces of cannabis. But I want to direct this question to something that was presented in the PowerPoint. You made a distinction between conditional licenses and murder licenses. What is the benefit of the conditional license, and why would anybody want a murder license if they were able to get a conditional license in terms of dispensing this product?
Mhm. Yeah, so there's a few points there. The conditional licensing is again, standalone licensing system outside of MRTA. And that's capped at 200 individuals who will be eligible to receive a conditional retail dispensary license. Again, what we were trying to do is make sure that individual people, especially those that have been impacted by the war on drugs in the past, have first mover access, or are the first individuals going to the market to sell legalized adult use cannabis. Currently, there is no legalized adult use cannabis in New York State. The closest you can get is the medical cannabis. And we're trying to make sure that individual people, especially those impacted by prohibition and the war on drugs, have first market access to. We do have that $200 million private public fund that's being built right now. That's going to help people who receive the conditional license to defer the cost for an extended period of time of creating and finding the real estate, building out the store, making sure it's up to spec, making sure that the filtering systems are working well. And you're not going to find that coming out of the MRTA or the MRTA licenses.
All right, let me jump in here, Philip, and go to Liz to share with us some of the questions that have been sent in by Upper West Side residents.
Okay, thanks, Steve. I'm Liz DeVito with the West 75th Street Block Association, and as Steve mentioned earlier, I'm also with the coalition on the board. The content of this question was actually a few people submitted something similar, but this one is from a resident who also happens to be a reporter for the West Side Rag, so it's a very thorough question, and it goes like, it's really about the gray market. So I think Estelle and Justin might want to listen and maybe weigh in on this with Pascal and Philip. What is being done to enforce the proliferation of illegal pot shops beyond sending them a letter? What are other enforcement techniques that will be used with these illegal pot shops? And lastly, when the legal stores finally arrive, what mechanisms are in place to actually close the illegal ones down? Also, whose manpower and jurisdiction will it be? So that was a lot of questions there. I can repeat it if you want, and I don't know who wants to take the first crack at it.
How about one representative from the DA's office and one representative from the state?
Okay, great.
Justin, Estelle, how about Justin? You're the assistant district attorney, Justin. You're on the spot.
So hi, everyone. Thank you for the question.
We can't see you, Justin.
No, and yes, so I apologize. I'm actually home with little kids running around, so I apologize for not being able to turn the camera on. My apologies. That's a very good question. So I'm here mostly today to listen and learn. I imagine and I'm going to take all this information back to my bosses, and the whole point is to kind of formulate a plan to deal with those issues. But I imagine that the way it's going to work is we're going to prosecute the people that are selling cannabis illegally after this regime goes into place, the same way we are now. So, there are laws that are in effect now for that criminalizes certain possession and sale depending on the amounts involved. It's not entirely decriminalized. And then, of course, when there's shops involved, we're going to have larger amounts that could get to potential felony charges. And I imagine that those will be the same kind of investigations where we have civilian witnesses, possibly undercovers from the NYPD that we're working with, and assistant DAs will work an investigation into particular locations and see what charges may be warranted. But again, that's in the future, and we certainly will be working closely with the NYPD and all the various precincts in Manhattan to make sure that we address illegal behavior in this market and continue to come to community meetings like this one so that we can hear your concerns and respond to them.
Is anything being done now for about the illegal sales?
So I'm unaware of any particular investigation, but yes, we have no policy that is preventing us or that is aimed at or directed towards not prosecuting those cases. There are laws on the books currently for selling marijuana. It begins at the a misdemeanor level for selling, I believe, over 3 ounces of marijuana or selling to someone under 21 to address the question before. And then the penalties and the level of crime goes up based on the amounts. So if we are aware of stores that are selling large amounts of marijuana, that my understanding is that is certainly a case that we would investigate and prosecute.
Justin,
Okay, thank
I
you.
apologize for jumping in here, but we all see what's happening right now on the Upper West Side. We see that there are trucks and there's retail selling going on now. So I appreciate that you're looking to the future, and we too are concerned, I think, about the future. But I think we really have to press the fact that we're not seeing any significant enforcement. And I'm led to believe that the police have been acting this way because they've been told that the district attorney is not prosecuting these cases. So we need to know where we stand, whatever the position is. It is unclear to us what is happening, and therefore the lack of clarity about what's going to happen is even greater.
So I'll just jump in and relay two things for some of the cases that can't, not the trucks for just a minute, just general low-level drug dealing that we've received complaints about throughout Manhattan. We are coordinating closely. Our chief assistant has been involved with my team, who's been hearing from the community about these concerns. We're coordinating closely with all the different precincts, as well as bringing the special narcotics prosecutor's office to coordinate with us, because they also handle some of these cases. Regarding the trucks, the DA knows that Justin and I are on this call and is interested in learning more about the trucks, and we're going to bring this information back to him. And Steve, we can follow up with you on strategies that we could talk about for the legal trucks.
Liz?
I'm sorry. Did you want more questions, Steve? Is that?
Please, from those.
All right. Okay. Well, you touched on this with the Clean Indoor Air Act, but there were also questions about smoking weed outside, and the effect of secondhand smoke and people smoking in the parks and in the neighborhood. And some people ask, if you're in an apartment building, does that building have the right to enact a no weed smoking policy? So there were a few people who asked about that.
So as it relates to smoking, as Phil said, wherever smoking cigarettes is prohibited, smoking cannabis is prohibited. And so if a building has a non-smoking policy, then that is the policy of the building. And that means that you cannot smoke cigarettes and you cannot smoke cannabis. So it would have to be a building no smoking policy.
Okay. Okay.
But do we want to go to
go
Dean,
ahead.
who has many questions from
Yes,
the,
a lot of questions
YouTube-
have come in on YouTube. I will,
from the
I will
YouTube
mute my.
chat? Yeah, go ahead, Dee. We can't hear you. You're muted.
Okay, thank you so much for being here. This is a big deal everywhere, but certainly our community has lots of concerns and questions. So these are coming from our YouTube viewers. I'll start with Valerie Benes, who's asking, what delivery systems will the dispensary sell? For instance, gummies, tablets, liquid tinctures. Will they be licensed to sell all of those things in one dispensary?
Yes, one of the, we know that the illicit market is not disappearing simply because we have some retail dispensary stores popping up. One of the ways that we want to get individuals to come to the retail dispensaries is certainly having variety of option. So yes, at the manufacturing level in that seed to sale system that that I showed you, we will have the ability to, have everything from gummies to, the bud or the flower of the plant, certainly concentrates, whether it's wax or shatter or the vape pen. There'll be a whole assortment and variety that will be available at the retail dispensaries. And we want it that way in order to make sure that individuals know when they go there that they're going to have a wider variety of opportunity than they would in the illicit market.
Got it.
And also a cleaner product as well. So yeah, there will be large variety of options at these stores.
Thank you. So you may not be able to answer this question yet, but the question has come up. How many dispensaries are there going to be on the Upper West Side? Where will they be located? I mean, have you actually started processing licenses for those 9 licensed areas?
No, we've not started processing licenses for those 9 licensed areas. As Phil said in his presentation, we have conditional licenses that the one that we've already granted licenses for is the conditional grower's license. And we at this time don't know where the dispensaries will be located. But one thing that, our chair executive director has said is we don't really want to operate from a lens of scarcity. And we've seen what's happened in other states that's legalized before New York State. And so we're really trying to move in a very systematic way. And there are some people who are like, hurry up, this is taking so long. And there are others that are like, oh my gosh, please take your time. And so what we're going to do is allow the market to, help us see where the gaps are. And so there will be initial licenses, and then we're going to see how is the market doing, because what we don't want is there to be an oversupply, and what we don't want is there to be an over demand, and so we're really trying to find that sweet spot. But as of now, they're beyond the conditional cultivator license. There are no licenses that have been granted.
Thank you. That question was from Ellen Shell. Here's a comment that may be helpful to you. This is from Ruth Refkin. She says the trucks are successful because it is taking so long to get legal stores open. When can we actually expect to see legal and safe locations open? I think you've kind of addressed that already.
Yes, I mean, we're still in the process of, writing the regulations, and the entire public comment period, as Phil said. And we do have the, conditional license. So we have the conditional adult retail dispensary license, but we purposefully had the conditional cultivator license first, because before there's a store, you must have product, right? So you can't have a store with no product. And so that's why we did that. And so there are seeds in the ground, plants are growing, and we're having the other conditional licenses come online. And again, I direct people to the chat where there's public comment period for the other conditional licenses that we have the regs out for right now. And as I said, you know, with the previous question, there is a segment of New Yorkers that are like, this is taking forever. And then there's another segment of New Yorkers that want us to really take our time. And so we are really trying to balance all segments of New Yorkers. But what we will say is we are very clear, as Phil has you know, outlined in the presentation, that we want to do this in a way that is safe for all New Yorkers. We all live here in the state, and we want this to be successful for the state, but it also has to be done in a way that doesn't really create unforeseen circumstances. We'll make some missteps, but we certainly don't want it to be like we've seen in other states.
Got it. Thank you so much. We've got one more question. Given that these businesses, this is from Ken Coughlin, given that these businesses have to be cash only because of federal illegality, are there concerns about large amounts of cash floating around?
Certainly, yeah. You know, there are certainly concerns. You know, this product that we're talking about, adult use cannabis, is illegal at the federal level, and certainly seems like it will remain that way for a while into the future. And that just limits so much of what can be done, including access to U.S. or federal government banks. However, one step that we have taken in New York is to allow New York State chartered banks to participate in the industry and not receive any issues from the state. It's really at the federal level that banks, credit card companies don't want to go near this stuff. And it's perfectly reasonable and logical for them to have that perspective. It is, you know, a problem, or I shouldn't even say problem at this point. It's simply a reality that we see throughout all other states who have done this, where, yeah, it heavily relies on cash and transportation of that cash. And it's an element of the business that each retail dispensary owner, you know, will have to factor in and take steps to make sure that it's protected as well as it can be. But there's no way around that this is and will remain a cash-heavy business for the foreseeable future. However, New York State has taken that step of allowing New York State chartered banks to participate in the industry, and that could lead to some alleviation of the cash flow problem. But at the end of the day, it's a simple reality that we're faced with right now.
I know it's hard for you to say, but what is the target date for this? Is there a target date? Is it you're just kind of putting it out there and you're just going to wait and see what happens?
So before we get to that, I just want to go back to the cash heavy. So in one of the slides that Phil showed, it showed the ancillary businesses needed to have a healthy cannabis ecosystem, and security was one of them, right? So yes, it's a very cash heavy business, but in all the dispensaries that we've seen across the country in other states, they have very tight security. So we've taken the steps here in New York State, as Phil said, with the state charter banks, but there's also tight security in these places. And so the fact that it is a cash heavy industry, you know, there are steps that the dispensaries take to ensure safety of the people coming in, safety of their employees, and safety in the community. So I really do want to say that.
So let's extend a few more minutes because of the number of questions that are being asked here. But Is there, as Dee was relaying this question, is there a date when you expect to have the first retail establishments open on the Upper West Side? Is there a target?
And I understand the focus of this conversation is the Upper West Side, but we do have, we do hope to have dispensaries open across the state, sometime in 2022.
Okay, well, that's a good, I'm going to come back to the room with some questions from members, but I just wanted to ask you, if I could, how do we, as block associations, as community members, how do we engage about both the location and the operational parts of what is happening in our community? What is our role to be able to share the concerns and the expectations? Because many are welcoming this, but they welcome it in a way that they feel will be appropriate in our community, which may be different than in other communities throughout the state. So how do we make our concerns and how do we participate? Are we part of the participation in the locations? Does it come before the community board? Is there community input on the locations? How is that going to be worked out?
So I think there are two parts. So I'll take the regulatory part and Phil can take the other part. How do you participate as a New Yorker is the public comment period. Really, that is truly how you participate. And Steve, you heard us say this at our other presentation with the community board. I think you have a thriving organization here. So look at the regulations for all the conditional licenses that we're putting out, and then for the regular murder licenses that we're putting out. And really put your best minds on this and take a look at it and provide us feedback. That is one way that you participate, is really making sure, and certainly you can shoot an email to somebody, but it should really be memorialized in the public comment period, because that is what the reg writers will be looking at. And that is your opportunity to have your voice heard, your concerns, your ideas on how to make this work better. That is the opportunity for you to do that.
Okay, Philip, briefly, if you could, please, because our time is precious and I want to get to a few more comments from people.
Sure. Yeah, I can keep it brief. One of the elements found in MRTA in the legislation is notification to the municipality when someone is applying for these licenses. And community boards are part of that notification process. And there is time for community boards to certainly write letters in support of or not supporting different individuals and locations, and certainly weighing in on that process. You can write letters once you have been notified that an individual is moving forward with a MRTA license, and express different fears or fears, doubts, or what you might think is a great opportunity for the area within those letters going along with the applicants moving forward. So you will be able to weigh in that way. And I think Pascal's point is should certainly be emphasized. Describing what you would like during the regulatory comment period is certainly going to be helpful for the office.
Thanks, Philip. I assume, I know you're upstate in Albany, but we're an engaged community who wants to be engaged and wants to comment and wants to participate in the activities in our community. So we need to know how the tools are with this one to do so. Ed, did you have a comment and a question to share?
Yes, thank you, Steve. I'm Ed Soloway. I'm co-president of the West 90s Neighborhood Association. And I'd just like to say the purpose of the new law, as we all know and a majority support, is to change the behavior of people who are buying marijuana so that they buy it legally, and they buy marijuana that has been tested and doesn't have pesticides, and to change their behavior from illegal to legal. My concern is that from what I'm hearing tonight, and being in business and knowing that the purpose of business, is profits, is to make money, is that retailers here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan are going to pay a fortune in rent, tens of thousands of dollars. They're going to pay employees, pay taxes. They're going to pay for fancy packaging. They're going to pay for testing. And now I hear tonight that the state is going to tax up to 18% on top of all of that. My concern is that the price, and my question is in your research from talking to other states, Colorado, California, Oregon, where they've had multi-year head starts. If the retail price is too high, people are not, their behavior is not going to change. And I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's certainly an element that we need to watch carefully. And we're like with everything, we're trying to find that proper balance between taxation and making sure that people feel comfortable coming to a retail dispensary. And look, there are other elements that we certainly hope will drive individuals there. The clean and tested aspect of the product is certainly one. Making sure that heavy metals aren't in there, which will be tested for, pesticides, which will be tested for, the exact THC levels. So we're certainly hoping that even though it would cost more than something on the illicit market, that the product itself and the health of the product before it gets to that shelf will drive individuals. And, that's something that the illicit market cannot offer. They might tell you they've tested it, but they haven't. I don't see why someone outside of the legal market would do that. And also, again, as I said earlier, the variety of products that we're offering, which are clean and where they came from, we certainly hope would push an individual to make what we would consider the right decision to come to a legal dispensary. And we're certainly not claiming that we're going to implement this perfectly. There's going to be mistakes, even though we can learn a lot from previous states of what they've done incorrectly. There will be some stumbles on our end, which I think is the nature of creating an ecosystem from scratch, which is illegal at the federal level. There's going to be issues.
Philip, let me ask you. Let me see if Dee can throw at us.
Yes,
another...
I have one more question from Melissa Elstein of Good Energy Movement and Wellness. Is it going to be grown organically in New York State?
So as far as what might even be considered organic,
Mhm.
that I think has a lot of different definitions for people, including if you're using electricity versus the sun. Maybe an individual will say there's a dividing line there with whether or not it's organic or something. As far as we are certainly limiting, as I've said, pesticides. And the cleanliness of the product is, all but guaranteed once it gets to the retail level. But again, I'm not sure, necessarily what they would mean by organic. I mean, some hydroponics, maybe those wouldn't be considered organic because it's not in soil or something.
Well, I think New York State probably has standards for organically grown produce. So I would assume it would have to follow those same guidelines, but I don't know. Anyway, that was one of the questions from one of our YouTube viewers.
We'll certainly, take that question back. And we're in the reg writing period, so it may be that the attorneys who were working on this have thought of this. It may be that they haven't. This is the first time actually that we've gotten that question. So we certainly will bring it back. And as Phil says, what one considers organic, someone else may not, but we'll definitely flag that. Thank you.
Well, thanks to everyone for joining us. Of course, thanks to all my neighbors for getting together to talk about all this. We will look for more information We will try to engage in all the ways you've talked about, and I'm sure we'll be creative and come up with some ways you haven't talked about to try to share our thoughts on what we feel is important for our community. To the district attorney's office and to our friends from the state government who are responsible for putting this all, we wish you good luck, and we thank you so much for being a part of tonight's program. So thanks to all. Check our website and see about more activities from the coalition. Stay safe, and we'll be in touch soon. All the best, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.